And the main point is it's not about having or not having attraction, not having aversion, because no one of us is able to be without attraction or aversion. But the question, the real question for all of humanity is, what do we want? What do we not want? What should we be attracted to? What should we be? What should we try to avoid? And so many paradigms, and many visions come out of this question. And there are two aspects about this. One has to do with an inner process, and I wanted to talk about this today, where we're able to have a little bit more clarity and cultivate within ourselves what is good for us and what is harmful. And another is when someone else tries to impose onto us what we should be attracted to and um, what we should have aversion to, and that's so that's like reward or punishment, basically. So I not very attracted to drinking water, but I know that I'll be rewarded if I drink water, so I'll drink it even though I'm not particularly attracted to it. Or I don't like drinking water, but if I don't drink water, I'll be punished. So I'll drink the water because I have aversion towards the punishment. So if we look, our system in general, even laws and economy is based on attraction aversion. I mean, how can I influence? How can I play, or actually even force someone to do something or avoid something else? I'm going to use his aversions and attractions. If I'm able to understand what his attractions are, I can seduce that person in some way by offering him something in exchange for something else. If on the other side, if I'm able to understand what his aversions are, then through that I can create fear by generating a kind of punishment. Like, if you don't do this, this is this, that, and the other is going to happen to you. And when we talk about morality, our ability to follow rules in our life, normally these rules are based on, they're based on what we should abandon, what we should cultivate. So if we look historically, at a certain point, a group of people or one person realized or decides, understands that you can use different verbs. At some point he establishes what things are good and what things are bad. Some behavior is beneficial, some behavior is harmful, and we can share this by explaining, to try to generate in someone else that same kind of attraction or aversion. So then naturally this person spontaneously generates this aversion or uh, or attraction. This would be kind of like self-morality, which would be the best. But is the best, but it takes time and it's not always possible. So for me to have the same attraction or aversion, I really need to understand the why. I need to attribute a certain value to these things. Another way is the immorality that is imposed, where I say, you should not kill. If you kill, you go to hell. They would say, oh well, that's like in the Christian tradition. If you look in certain contexts, Buddhism is not that different. Every time a religion developed, when it became a religion for the masses, Many people, didn't have the ability to explain the why, to everyone. So they developed this kind of method, to try to direct the people to behave in a certain way. Then the only the so if these people don't have this like spontaneous feeling, I haven't developed this feeling spontaneously, so then the method would be to create punishment or reward. And so we can say that religions have been quite sly, we can say, in this way, where they've basically created rewards or punishments, that are invisible. So you'll see that after you die, this will happen. So maybe you play on the hope of heaven and the fear of hell. And this is something, even within the history of Buddhism, this has happened. It's not something. I remember once I was a child, maybe I was 7, 8 years old, and the Dharma Center in Brazil had just been founded, and a nun came, and they were preparing for the tsog offering, where the ceremony where we offer food, etc. And someone came, and as we were preparing the offerings, this person ate something, and there was a big. This person said, "Oh no, you can't eat it before offering," and then this person said, "No, because you'll go to hell." you know and then just like a whole big story came out of this, big mess came out of this. But what's important for us is that it can happen. There are people who have more experience than we do. They have a deeper vision, and then they try to share that with us. And until we really understand, it takes a long time. So if in the meantime I can avoid harmful actions and cultivate and do more beneficial actions, that's better for me. It's like you know if I say, like, okay, if you eat this, it's you're gonna get cancer. I'm not gonna eat it. I'm not gonna eat it. Maybe even if I don't understand exactly all the mechanisms of the body and nutrition, etc. But from this fear, then I avoid doing something harmful. So we develop this attraction and aversion, influenced by reward and punishment. This fear that can be generated. And this, in our society, this happens. There are laws, there are rules, there are things. There are even like social rules. Like if you do this, this is going to happen, and then you'll be ashamed if you do that. So we live under the influence of the attraction and aversion. But the strongest point of all this, a part of all of this, is created by ourselves. We're the ones who are attributing a certain value to something. This depends on us, no one else. Just look, for example, one very key example, the economy itself. What determines the value of a piece of printed paper? There to be a common view that attributes that value to it. The system works when the majority of the people who live in a certain context attribute a similar value to the same thing. At that point, that object, it seems like that object takes on that value, but it's nothing other than an attributed value. Once that trust in that object, the the value of that object diminishes, the value changes. It happens in India years ago. I mean, it wasn't one day to the next. Actually, it was from 8 p.m. to midnight. The Prime Minister went on TV and said, from midnight to night, this was at 8 o'clock at night, all printed money, anything from 1,000 rupees, from 1,000 rupees and more are no longer valid. It would be like anything over 20 euros. So he said you have 15 days or a month to deposit your deposit your the money, but for the first 15, the first 1,500, you 1,000. So sorry, there were like you didn't have to declare the first 1,500, but then after 1,500, you had to declare it, and then you had to pay like 200% in taxes. So it created an amazing chaos. I mean, there were literally trash cans full of money that people were throwing away. So, but anyway, the point is, it's something that one day had a tremendous value. The next day was just printed paper, no longer money, and it was just thrown away. So what determined whether it was money or printed paper? Just the value that was attributed to it. So what happens is that no matter what situation we find ourselves in our lives, maybe the person we have in front of us, or where we are, what we're doing, it's the same thing. I mean, we're the ones who decide whether it's printed paper or money. We're the ones attributing one value or another. And the most incredible thing is that when we attribute a certain value, that object takes on that life for us. So, an example that I've given many times, because it's quite primitive, and we have this mechanism within us, but we do have this ability to choose. This example with the cucumber, the grape, and the monkey. I've told the story many times. So there's this task given to a monkey where he's rewarded. So he's given a stone, he has to give back the stone, and then he gets a piece of cucumber. And then there's another monkey next to him that he can see. He does the same task. They keep repeating it maybe 50 times, and then he gives the monkey gives back the stone and gets not cucumber but a piece of a grape. And so the monkey next to him sees this, and so the next monkey, he gives back the stone, and instead of getting a grape like the first one, he gives him a cucumber like before, and he gets furious. What does this mean? I mean, what determines the value of something? If it's enough, it's not enough, it's good enough, it's good, it's not good. The cucumber was good enough before. What determines whether we have attraction or aversion to something? Is it an intrinsic value that we give, or is it a value that is it an intrinsic value of the actual object, or is it a value that we give? Unfortunately, very often the value that we attribute to something is based on comparing to something else, and this is really a trap. And number two, we have this we have a mechanism to give value to things that is based mostly on our feelings of pleasure or on pleasure or pain, more on pleasure or pain than whether it's good or bad for us. We have more attraction to things that are pleasurable, and we have more attraction to things that we find pleasurable compared to things that are actually good for us that may not be so pleasurable. For example, someone comes to us and tells us the things we like to hear. Let's give an example. Let's say that I like to be recognized, and someone comes to me and says, "Oh, you're so good," and here and there. At the end, I say, "Oh, what a great person! Oh, so lovely," because and I have attraction to that person because that person has a behavior that makes me feel good. And if someone came to me and said, "You know, you're a really good person, but you're quite arrogant. You know, this kind of behavior is not good for you. Maybe this person shows me this mechanism, so like how harmful it is, and acts in a way to help me see my own arrogance, but it doesn't feel good. So towards that person, what kind of feeling do I have? I have aversion. In the Lojong teachings, which is a mind training, comes from the teacher Atisha, says often our enemies are our best friends because they're the ones who show us what we need to change. There's a Tibetan proverb that Rinpoche used to repeat often. He would say, "From the mouth that of affection, from the mouth of affection, sweet words don't come." It's a little extreme, but in this context, you know, we shouldn't be attracted to what is pleasurable or what massages our ego, but what helps us grow, what's truly good for us. When I have food in front of me, my reference point to the reference as to whether I have attraction or aversion shouldn't be the taste of the food, but it should be whether this food is good for me or not, because I want to be healthy, and the pleasure is not necessarily well-being. This is a wrong idea. I mean, we have this idea that the feeling of pleasure as being well-being. So we try to be happy, cultivating, feelings of pleasure. It's stimulating sensory pleasures, or trying to get what we want, etc., and trying to avoid those negative experiences and feelings, when instead happiness is much more connected to a deep sense of satisfaction compared to actual pleasures. Even on a chemical level, the body, when one has a lot of sensory pleasures, that naturally after creates a kind of dissatisfaction. And exactly the whole process, I'm not able to explain, but this is what I remember. It's connected to serotonin and dopamine. But what's more important, happiness is much more connected to being harmonious with others, being satisfied, feeling connected. But where do I give value? And this is going to depend on me. I take this object in my hand, for example. I'm the one that's attributing value to this object. And something that's very important is our verbal and physical behavior influences tremendously the value that we give things. If I take this object and every time before I touch it, if I learn that I need to unite my hands, then I take it and then I put it on my head and then I use it with awareness, and then when I finish it, I with the dorje in my hand, I touch the dorje on my head. Now you're not supposed to. You don't do that with the dorje. I'm just inventing. But if I learn to do like this with this object, then naturally, then I'm going to attribute a very important value to it because I'm treating it with great respect. What happens when we give value to things? Those things become objects of attraction, and we're able to connect with them better. And something that's important for us is to have to have attraction to what's beneficial and aversion to what is harmful. It's fundamental. It's not easy. It's not so obvious, and it's not that simple. That's why, for example, for a long time it was really hard. It's actually still hard for me to be seated here. And I asked, well, why this place where I'm seated, which is called a throne, in reality, what's it for? It's here to help everyone, me included, to give value to the Dharma, the teachings. Because when we give value, naturally, we protect it. We protect it, and we take care of it. It's part of our life. When we take something for granted instead, we don't have attraction. So then we don't relate well to that person. We don't use it well, etc., etc. And one problem that many of us have is that our tendency is to take for granted the most important things that we have just because they're there. When I see the teachers of the past who used to do things like maybe at first glance seem crazy, but then if you look well, they have a very clear reason. For example, to receive Dharma teachings, receiving Dharma teachings was very difficult. Sometimes, the masters were treated like kings, were very inaccessible, and there was a tremendous amount of respect. There was one master in Tashi Lumpo in Tibet, for example, who was Nakchen Tutu. When he would go to the puja in the morning, it was like 200 meters from his house to the temple, but when he would go from his house to the temple, he would come with his entire entourage. So, he always had about 50 people around him every time he moved from one place to one place to a next, and then halfway, they prepared a beautiful place for him, with brocade for him to sit down and take his tea. It was from point of view from my culture, it almost made me laugh. I mean, it seemed so exaggerated, but I'm sure when you're there and you watch this, it cultivates great respect. I mean, say this is not just anyone. This is someone very special, because our tendency is to attribute value to to what others attribute value to. So, so, you know, maybe even without even knowing, you see people um, um, show tremendous respect for something or someone. You know, this shows you the power of influence. Something, an example for me, it was like this something was very powerful. This like, you know, it's very easy to influence people when 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 many people think in a similar way. You know, like those who think that the planet is flat. You know, at a certain point, and people say the world is flat. And then you have thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people thinking that the world is flat. You know, you know, in influencing, trying to then. I mean, I mean, you know, then it became like in modern times saying that it was a conspiracy to keep, you know, it was a conspiracy to keep us all under control. Um, when it, you know, the earth is not round, it really is flat. You know, but just to say, I mean, it's mind blowing that this could exist. But my point is that they were very influenceable, and what we need to do is give value to what is good for us. I've seen even with my own eyes, you know, like this attitude of great respect to people like Demogoro Gonzo Rinpoche, or this Rinpoche Tashilumpo. I mean, we give value, you know, we give value to a spiritual guide. You know, the more value you give, the more you'll receive. Because if you take it for granted, if I take for granted the words he says, then I'm not going to take them in and follow them. Instead, if you know the two words that he says, if I give tremendous respect to him and his words, I'm going to make a treasure of those words. I mean, so we have the power to attribute that value. And it's very important to reflect on what's important and what's not important. Something like health, for example, is obvious. Just something so easy to understand, but we also take that for granted. Having time. We also we also take that for granted. Yeah. So, yeah, we could say time itself is our life, but instead, you spend your times, you spend your life just um, passing time, passing time. So if time could speak, it would have a lot to say to offend us, you know. Mm. So if someone, if of course we need to, we need to work. We need to take care of the things we have, take care of the house. And then when you have a little bit of free time to do what you want, then people just try to pass the time. So time is very precious. It has an enormous value, but we need to give value to it. The opportunities we have, the people that we have around us, the opportunities to be able to receive teachings, Dharma itself. I mean, what? Why do we treat Dharma teachings with respect? For example, I mean, the Dharma teachings represent our spiritual path. We don't leave prayers and teachings and texts on the floor. We treat them with respect. Say, well, why? Well, because you know people say, well, then you'll get negative karma. You'll go to the hells. But no, worse. What happens is I lose the value, I and I take for granted and something that has a tremendous value. Instead, if I give the right value, and when I take a text in my hands, I'm present, and the more quality time I can dedicate, um, um, the more time the more respect I have, and the more benefit I'll have. So once we recognize something is important for us, then we need to cultivate that value. Like, for example, and then we give a lot of value to things that are actually harmful to us, you know. So, the value that we give to behavior, to someone who acts badly, we give value by dedicating our energy and our time and our thoughts and being conditioned, by someone else's bad behavior, you know. Just for example, like, let's say I don't like the bottle on the table. It's just an example. I don't care if the bottle's on the table. But let's say that I didn't like the bottle on the table. Okay, so then, and then I arrive and the bottle's on the table. If I give a lot of value that for the bottle to not be on the table, and it's difficult for me to stay with the bottle on the table. It's difficult for me, and maybe I generate anger towards the person who put the bottle on the table, or there's a part of my mind that is constantly focused on the bottle on the table. But who is giving all this power? Who is conditioning my life? It's just the value that I'm attributing, no one else. When we see someone who has a behavior that we don't think is right, but if that takes up all the space in our lives, and we're getting upset, and we're angry and we get upset, and maybe it's even someone we've never met, we've only seen them on the newspaper, but it's taken up all this mental space. We're the ones giving value. We're the ones allowing that thing or that person to take up all the space in our lives. But what's taking up space is the value that we're giving. Remember that the attraction and aversion, we're the ones to determine whether we have attraction or aversions to something or someone, and we can cultivate aversion, we can cultivate attraction, and we can diminish certain attractions, diminish certain aversions too. And so verbal and physical actions can be very helpful. So if there's something that I should be attracted to, physically I should show this respect, for example, or this value, verbally, physically, because it's important to me. If there's something that I see, something I give too much energy to, and it's not worth it, it's actually harmful to me, and I should have aversion to it, then I should stop talking about that thing, not giving it attention, not giving it energy, and gradually it's going to diminish too. That aversion is going to diminish too. That space that it's taking in our mind. And something strange is that the longer we generate aversion to something, the more that object seems intrinsically an object of aversion. And we feel like it's not in our hands to determine its value or not. The more I say that the bottle on the table is not good, the more I get angry that the bottle's on the table, the more I'm going to believe that the bottle should not be on the table. And it's not something that depends on me. It's like, no, the bottle should not be on the table. And then I just totally lose my freedom. It seems as like it's intrinsically wrong for the bottle to be on the table. When instead, I'm the one attributing that value. I'm the one who gives that power, and we could spend days talking about many things. Okay, but when the bottle's on the table, it doesn't allow for this, that, and the other. But if I have attraction or aversion to that thing, it really just depends on me. And the question is it harmful or beneficial? It's not, not necessarily, is it the best position for the bottle? The question is it harmful or beneficial? And I can't, before getting to aversion to attraction, there's neutrality, Okay. Okay. So, okay, you can also just, there are different levels, I mean, I can just have a total panic attack, panic attack as long as the bottle is there, or I can just move it. Maybe it's not the best position for it, but I have less aversion. Let's say, we're the ones giving the value. So I invite all of you to remember that our attractions and our aversions depend on the values that we attribute. Very often, these values that are influenced by cultural, the social context in which we live, but they're always values that we are attributing. So we need to cultivate that attraction that is good for us, and diminish the attraction to things that are harmful, and cultivate aversion to that which is harmful to us. This is one of the most important points along our path. Otherwise, there's a danger that we're going to generate desires or idealized idealizations that are not at our reach. And to conclude, our physical behavior, verbal behavior is very important, because through the choices we make, how we relate to people, the way we speak, our physical and verbal behavior has an enormous power on directing our minds. Lumpur Thata explained this to me for the first time. He's the abbot of Dharmakaya in Thailand. Is a master of great importance. And he said to me, suffering comes from our habits, from the mind. But how do we change the habits of the mind? By changing the way we act verbally and physically, and then gradually that's going to influence the mind. Because if we just stay with the illusion that, okay, I change my mind and then, and then the body and then the speech doesn't matter. No. I want to see if it's really like that, someone should be able to not speak in a certain way or act in a certain way because it's the mind that is commanding. But before getting there, it's a long path. So at the beginning, through our body and through our speech, we should direct our mind. It becomes even easier. And then we can help ourselves abandon what is harmful and cultivate what is good. And this is the essence of Buddhist teachings. It's the summary of Buddhist teachings. It says, don't compute negative actions or actions that are the cause of suffering. Abandon non-virtuous actions and cultivate virtuous actions in an excellent way. Cultivate in an excellent way what is virtuous, what is good for you. In other words, abandon what is bad for you and and cultivate what's good, and obtain total control over your minds. Be the master of yourself. So, okay. So tell your mind, you do this, you do that, not just according to how the wind blows. So abandon what is harmful, cultivate what is good, what is beneficial, and control your mind. These are the teachings of Buddha. This is the path that Buddha transmitted to us. Let's begin by seeing the value that we attribute to things. So remember that it's not determined by the reality that surrounds us, but by the value that we actually attribute to it. Now it's time for dedications.
Jitsun lame kutse rapten chi namkar tinle chochur gepadang losan tempe drume sasum ki drove munsel takto ne gyuru chi nimo dele tsendele nime kuyan delekshin nintsen takto delekpe Concho sumke jingelo, concho sumke ngodrubat sol, concho sumke trasciscio. All'alba o al tramonto, di notte o durante il giorno, possano i tre gioielli concederci le loro benedizioni, possano aiutarci ad ottenere tutte le realizzazioni e cospargere il sentiero della nostra vita con molti segni di buon auspicio. At dawn or dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness. Buona giornata, grazie a tutti.